That's the type of book which I'm looking for, that feels autumnal. You know, the type of one which you want to be reading late at night and a little bit scared to go to the toilet afterwards. Hi, my name is Oliver Bliss and this is my channel Book Drawer. For those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and occasionally I create images out of it. Today I'm doing the TBR for the Autumn Readathon, which has been created by Mercedes from MercysBookishMusings. I am leaping on the back of after watching this from Matthew Sharappa and Simon Savage's videos, because I was like, oh, actually that's quite quick and I can do that. I am actually about to go and take a train over to Liverpool to go and see the Vogue Ball, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I have done little reviews of the last two. This year is Toy Box, and I will be dressed as a human toy doll man thing. So that's why I'm clean shaven at the moment, because I will be applying copious amounts of makeup, and I'm also wearing this groovy top which is from Primarni, but I actually just think I will end up wearing this. This is actually a woman's top, but tops don't have genders, so I'm stealing it. Anyway, I should just get on with this TBR readathon. I thought this was actually an achievable video, which I'm doing in a bit of a rush, and it's just got some quite vague prompts, and we've actually got time to kind of enjoy the autumnal feeling, which is my favourite season. So I was like, yeah, this is a good achievable video which I can do in quite quickly. So the first one is to read a gothic spooky book. The second is to read a non-fiction book that feels autumnal. The third is to read a novel set in a cold location, and the fourth is to read a historical fictional novel. So the first one which I'm going to do, which covers both a gothic spooky book which is set in a cold location and it's historical fiction. So this is 3 out of 4. This is pretty damn good actually. This is Dark Matter, a Ghost Story by Michelle Paver, and I actually recently was down in London, so I went to Gaze of Word, and I was feeling in the mood for something spooky and autumnal and a thriller based one, because I was like, I hadn't had just a good exciting page turner for a while, and when I was reading the back of this I thought this is going to provide all those things. Someone from The Observer said that I found myself suddenly afraid to look out the window, so I call it a success, and they found that they were reading this throughout the night. I was like, yeah, that's the type of book which I'm looking for, that feels autumnal. You know, the type of one which you want to be reading late at night and a little bit scared to go to the toilet afterwards. It's okay, I didn't die. That was just a postie. Just to finish this one off, this is Dark Matter, which is set in 1937. It features Jack, who is offered the opportunity to go on an expedition over in the Arctic. So he travels away from Norway, leaps at the opportunity, but then people, one by one, who are involved start disappearing, and he could end up being completely isolated and lost in this dark and cold and scary terrain, and it's titled as a ghost story. So just at that moment where I felt like it had come all the way from the Arctic to say hello to me, it hadn't, it's all good. This feels like it could be very much of a cool, thrilling, scary ride, so I hope it does not disappoint. Sometimes when you get a ghost story they can just fizz and flop, but others can flare and excite and delight, and I really do hope it's going to be that type of journey. The next one I want to talk about is A Keeper, which is by Norton, of all people. So this is actually his second book, I think, and I saw him talk about it at Manchester Literature Festival. It was a huge turnout of people. He was just so charming, charismatic and fun to watch. The hour in which he was talking just whizzed by, and then he went into a whole load of questions, and it was just really lovely to hear him speak instead of him interviewing other people and learning about them. But this book is basically about this kind of rural lifestyle which is set in Ireland, where there are these kind of hidden secrets and things that people say to each other which don't necessarily translate the truth or what you expect the truth to be. And apparently the setup of the beginning of this story is based on true events or events which he heard, and it involves the passing of letters. I don't know the detail about it, but he was saying this is something that he actually heard and thought that would make a great story, and it informed very much the writing of this book. So I'm very intrigued by that. But he was saying what you might necessarily see at the start as might not necessarily be how it twists and turns later on. So I think this would be quite fun to crack into and consume. I'm looking forward to it. But he was just lovely to learn about, and he was saying how there is a difference between rural England and rural Ireland, where in England you often have these clusters of little town centres, and for my hometown that's very, very true. We've got a town market, we've got pubs and churches and little newsagents, and they sit together, and that was on my main street. And he was saying whereas in Ireland it's much more spread out, and they don't have this same kind of connection or community as a focus, and really you can actually become very isolated quite quickly if you wanted to be. So I found that really interesting in terms of what that means and how you articulate it into a narrative and into a book. So I think this will be a very interesting read to go through, and just because I'm very curious to know what Graham Norton's writing style is like, I'm quite excited to get into this one. The next one is quite clever. It's called The Tall Man, which is also another spooky, probably cold one, because it says, a tall man, a very dark wood, and a murder case that held the world's attention. I actually attended to a book launch with the lovely Simon Savage, and when I was reading the kind of blurb for this one and looking through, this just looks like a cool, spooky, weird little murder mystery, but it actually goes back and forward through time, looking through it, and it's got different kind of bits which are written as either email correspondence or letters, and just different bits and pieces that build up a picture of what happened to this tall man who takes daughters. So I'm just intrigued by this one, and again, it's because I think it is just this kind of autumny vibe that I'm feeling. I'm very much feeling this vibe right now, where you just want to be spooked out a little bit. I love freaky movies and I love creepy books, and I actually haven't read one of those for a while, because I've been kind of engaged in a lot of other read-alongs and readathons, and I haven't just kind of gone for pure escapism in this way. So yeah, I'm totally on board for this one. The next one I'm also going to read, because this is a nomination for the Polari Prize, Elmet by Fiona Mosley. I'm feeling more inclined to read this now. I previously did like an overview of the different Polari Prize nominations, and I was less kind of inclined to read with this one because it's more focused on a rural location where you've got this family unit who are trying to just live out their lives in peace, and then other people around that community are causing some drama, and I was just like, that just screams too much of my growing up experience in a small town location, and I wasn't particularly feeling it for it then. But now, I guess with the weather change, I am actually feeling more in the mood for this one. And also, I have loved two of the other previous books which I've read on the Polari Prize shortlist, which is the Museum's Island, and I've got it here. I read it on the train, The Pansy Boy. I've actually read this one already. It's brilliant. It's beautiful, beautiful book. So yeah, basically, I'm kind of out for this one. This feels appropriate, being more autumnal now, and also because it's another one on the shortlist, and I want to read all the ones which are on the shortlist for the Polari Prize. I'm not usually into general prizes, but the Polari Prize feels a bit more interesting and important, particularly for my channel, which is supporting queer fiction. So yes, I will be checking this one out. The next one I picked up as just a compulsive purchase buy when I was down in London recently, but I was just walking through Waterstones and I noticed that this looked like A Brave New World as a title cover, and this it turns out it is by the same writer, Aldous Huxley, and this is The Doors of Perception. So clearly I've tuned into the marketing and I'm well on board, but The Doors of Perception, Huxley has taken some mescaline, and which is like a chemical compound found in cactus, and clearly it opens the doors of his perception, but this is done in two halves. The Doors of Perception and the sequel Heaven and Hell. So I'm curious to see how someone as insightful and as witty as Aldous Huxley, seeing what he perceived through this transient state of mind. I'm well up for that little trip. And then finally, the Dark Paintings, which is actually, hold on, let's have a look here. So another one through Gay is the Word, which I got previously when we did the Booktuber meetup, and I've just not got around to reading this one. But this is about a man, Luigi Tomeno, who has some sort of mystical abilities which are kind of inside him, but he goes off and it becomes someone who is very much consumed by money and power, and enjoys indulging in young men and drugs and things, but he starts to see how this is destroying himself, and he takes up back to his paintings, but there is something within these paintings, I believe, that cause Luigi's life to spin out of control. I was just basically very absorbed by the way this was described. I've recently read A Picture of Dorian Gray because it's Victober. Really, really loved that book. It feels like this is more of a contemporary storytelling with that kind of similar device. I'm loving the fact that it's a little bit dark, it's a little bit queer, and it's a little bit arty. So yeah, I'm totally on board for this one. So those are all my TBR books. What are you reading during this wonderful season, my favourite season? I would love to hear from you, find out what you're up to. Let me know if you think I should be prioritising any of these books, or if you've read them, and let me know your comments down below. I will see you again real soon. Okay, bye!